What's going on, Ravens fans? Welcome into the Baltimore Ravens Rundown. We just got some major news on this head coach search from Tom Pelissero, and that is the Baltimore Ravens are bringing in Dolphins defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver on Tuesday for a second interview for their head coaching job, per source. We'll break down what that means, pros and cons, and a scouting report of what you might be able to expect for Anthony Weaver as a head coach. All that and more coming up on today's show. Appreciate you guys for being here. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. 120 subs away from 44.5K. We're going like crazy. That's because we're covering this coaching search better than anybody else on this platform. Make sure to lock us in. So Anthony Weaver is the first candidate to make it officially to the second round of interviews with the Baltimore Ravens. There were a lot of rumors that Kevin Stefanski was going to be that guy, and then as we know, Saturday, late afternoon, he was announced as the next head coach for the Atlanta Falcons. So Anthony Weaver is the first one to pass that first round test and make it to the second round. And it could be reunion time here in Baltimore. Former DC for the Miami Dolphins, 45 years old. Mike MacDonald, big nickel. That's the kind of defensive scheme that he runs. A little bit more on that in a second. Former Ravens defensive lineman and assistant coach under Mike MacDonald. Then when Mike MacDonald got hired as the DC or as the head coach of Seattle, Anthony Weaver got hired as the DC of Miami. Of course, that's when the Baltimore Ravens just decided to promote Zach Orr. Let's talk about the pros when it comes to hiring Anthony Weaver as your next guy. He will bring back that play like a Raven mentality that has been missing for Baltimore, honestly, since he and Mike MacDonald left. And if you've watched me cover this head coaching search for any amount of time, whether you checked in on the first day or whether this is your second video, I guarantee you've heard me talk about one of the big things I want in this next guy is a guy who can bring back physicality, toughness, both mentally and physically, aggression, violence, all of those things that it felt was missing in 2025 in a big way, both on the offensive and defense side of the football. And if you want to fall in love with Anthony Weaver, go listen to this press conference, okay? Now, we got the quote for you right here, but you got to listen to him say it because that has a little bit more emphasis than your boy saying it right here, regardless. At a press conference this season, he said, all of our problems that we need to solve can be solved through violence. In offensive football, at some point you draw a line in the sand and you say, I'm going to set the edge. I'm going to stick my helmet under this guy's chin, and I'm going to set the edge. I'm going to violently take the ball away, and that's what we need to do with a steely-eyed focus, with resolve, with resiliency, and we're going to stop people. And I'm determined, we're all determined for that to happen. That mentality has not been in Baltimore since Mike MacDonald and Anthony Weaver left, and I would welcome that back with open arms. You cannot look me in the eyes and tell me that that quote right there did not make you want to run through a brick wall for Anthony Weaver. Fill in the blank for me. I would feel blank if the Ravens hired Anthony Weaver. Let me know your answer down below in the comment section. Let's go to a second pro. He has played and coached for this organization. Baltimore is one of the most well-run organizations in the National Football League. And so having a guy that got to experience that as a player and as a coach, I think is a really, really big benefit. He knows what it's like to play for dominant teams. He knows what it's like to be a part of a dominant state of football, a dominant organization. And he also knows what it's like to be at the top of that in the coach ranks as well. I think getting those perspectives, like I said, both as a player and a coach, is incredibly useful. Number 3. We mentioned this when we showed you his player card earlier, but he runs the same defense as Mike MacDonald does, that big nickel type defense where, first off, what you do need is really, really strong and aggressive defensive linemen. So that would be priority number 1 if you hire Anthony Weaver, to make sure you got those guys in the building. But I do believe that this is a big benefit because a lot of the guys on this defense had unbelievable success in that defensive scheme. A lot of the guys that are already here in Baltimore played under Mike MacDonald in that certain philosophy. So I do think it'd be a little bit easier to get nailed down, a little bit easier for this group to have success in that. Great offensive connections after Miami. That's my 4th pro. This was always my sticking point when it came to Jesse Minter. Okay, and we've talked a lot of Jesse Minter over the last couple of weeks. But my biggest con with the potential of hiring Minter as your next head coach is he doesn't really have connections to a strong offensive tree. Like, think about it. He's coached a lot in college ball. Then for the National Football League, he's been a defensive coordinator or a defensive assistant for both of the Harbaughs. There's not like distinct, unbelievable, dominant offensive connections within those two coaching trees themselves. Like, who's his best offensive connection right now? Greg Roman? And Steve Bisciotti would like Greg Roman back in Baltimore. I was trying to think of a good metaphor to that. Basically, I'm going to tell you, he would never let Greg Roman back in Baltimore, and for good reason. The cool thing about Anthony Weaver is he just coached for a whole season, or two, for Mike MacDonald, and that's a really, really strong trait. Every player raves about him. This is our last pro. If you've heard any player who has ever played for Anthony Weaver, they have nothing but phenomenal things to say about him. He is the ultimate players coach. Every single person on his team, on his rosters, like I said, would run through a brick wall for him. And I think that that's kind of been lost in Baltimore over the last couple of seasons. Like, I feel like this year, I don't want to say John Harbaugh lost the locker room, but I think he lost the passion of the locker room. Like, I look at coaches and teams that have had success in the NFL over the last few seasons. I look at what Ben Johnson is doing in Chicago. Every single one of those players would run through a brick wall for him. I look at what Dan Campbell has done with turning around the Detroit Lions. Every single player would do whatever he asked them to do. Same with Mike Vrabel and the Patriots. Same with DeMeco Ryans and the Texans. Same with all these teams that we are at home watching yesterday because our team isn't there. That's what I'm looking forward to. Do you want the Ravens to hire Anthony Weaver? If you do, hit that thumbs up button and like today's video. Something I know you will like is our awesome friends and sponsor of today's show over at PrizePicks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than PrizePicks, where it always feels good to be right. Since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next season. So close the season out right with PrizePicks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Missing your fantasy team? My league is already over, but with PrizePicks, I don't have to wait until next year's draft to keep playing fantasy. PrizePicks lets you play fantasy football every week, even in the playoffs. Pick your favorite players and win when they hit their projections every week. No draft required. Join the millions of users. Sign up for America's #1 sports picks app. We got a very big game tonight. Miami, Indiana, national championship in college football. I'm going to take the more on Carson Beck, 29.5 pass attempts. I'm going to take the more on Malachi Toney, 5.5 receptions. Give me the more on Omar Cooper for half a receiving touchdown. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Link to this promo in the comments and description of today's video. Some cons, because not every coaching candidate is a perfect coaching candidate, and he is exactly fitting that bill. Look, his defenses were never elite in Miami, which does ring some alarm bells, at least a little bit. Now, I don't think his personnel was ever elite in Miami, but still, like, a good defensive coach should be able to coach through that. And they were not top 20 in a single defensive statistic, which to me is a little bit alarming. Now, some of that is because his defensive scheme, supposedly, is decently hard to get down. There were a lot of players in his first year that said, I'm still working through that. And then a lot of rookies this last year and free agent signings said the exact same thing. There are better X's and O's guys out there defensively. I think Robert Saleh is one of those. I think Brian Flores is one of those. And I think you can make the argument between Jesse Minter and Anthony Weaver, which one of those guys is better from an X's and O's standpoint. They run the same scheme, but who's a better coach? I think if you look at the defensive success in their two units, you might have your answer. And also, like, part of me wants to go outside of Baltimore. I don't know why that is. I can't necessarily put my finger on that and give you a 100%, accurate guess for why I feel that way. But, like, look, John Harbaugh was here for 18 seasons. And you're moving on from John Harbaugh. So part of me wants to move past the John Harbaugh connections and just start fresh, start new with a brand new turnover. Who's going to be the Ravens' next head coach? You let me know down below in the comment section. Gage, has it been 2 weeks since John Harbaugh's fired? 2 weeks tomorrow, I guess. Crazy. I would guess this search goes for 1 more week, and then we'll get our guy. Maybe over the end of the weekend. You let me know down below in the comment section. Some updated coaching odds for you. This is from BetOnline, I believe. Jesse Minter, still the clear favorite. Clint Kubiak and Robert Saleh are tied for second at plus 200. Sean McDermott sneaks himself in there at plus 900. I would say that's a 0% chance. And then Brian Flores rounds out the top 5 at plus 1,000. I really am happy that Clint Kubiak and Robert Saleh are still up there in that list. I would like Jesse Minter, but I would like Clint and Robert more. Right now, my top 5 goes Brian Flores, Robert Saleh, Clint Kubiak, Jesse Minter, and then Anthony Weaver at 5. That's going to do it for today's show. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We'll be back again tomorrow with more videos. Make sure to subscribe, like the video, join us for daily content right here at the Ravens.